Hi, this is Alex Orris, Classroom Technology Integration Specialist for Bullock and Roberts Middle Schools in Cuyahoga Falls. Today we're going to take a look at how students can use a Google Sheet to have more student ownership in their grades. So what I'm going to do is open up a brand new sheet, just like I'd have students do. And the idea of this is for students to monitor their progress book grades, but keep track of them. And instead of writing them on a piece of paper, to put them on a Google Sheet so we could sort and analyze and graph our results. So in my drive, I'm going to go New, Google Sheet. And Google Sheets is the rival to Microsoft Excel. It works exactly the same way. It might have limited features compared to Excel, but it's accessible anywhere, anytime, as long as you have the internet. So what I always instruct my students to do is give this a name. So if it's a sixth grader, we're going to call it a sixth grade sheet. And then I have them put their name on it. So like a table, we're going to start in cell A1. I always tell my students that cells are like a jail cell. It contains information. And like the game Battleship, this is cell A1. The coordinate grid works, you read from right to left and then up or down. So if we're graphing an ordered pair, we go right 1, up 3. Well, this is the same idea. We use columns as letters and then the rows as numbers. So we're going to start in A1. I'm going to tell them we always put the subject first as the title, and then beneath the subject in A2 we start our schedule. So if I go to ELA and then choir, and then I head to social studies, and then science, maybe my special in the afternoon is phys ed, and I finish the day in math. And this way, every subject that they receive a grade in, we could keep track of their grades. In B1, we start with the week. Since we're going to keep track, ideally, every week, we'll call B1 our week one. And I always like to show the kids how Excel and now Sheets, they have these nice little shortcuts. So if I select cell A7, this little button right here is very special. It's a repeat. Basically, it's a copy and paste across all cells. So if I drag that to the right, it's going to copy and paste math. If I take that down, it'll copy and paste math. It repeats it. What I always like to do is show them how this is a program built for math, and it's built to really look for shortcuts. So when I drag this across, most students say it's going to repeat and copy week one, but it actually adds one on. It actually adds one to week one, so it knows. All right, so we're setting up a table. I could drag this all the way to K1, and we've got our first 10 weeks ready to go. I usually do 10 weeks just in case you're in a longer quarter that might have some half weeks like Thanksgiving week or spring break week. At least this way we don't run out of room. Okay? So students usually, they look up their grades, they go to Cuyahoga Falls webpage, easiest way to find it. And on the left, there is right now some quick links, including Black Tiger community pages and parent pages. And we always talk about how the number one person that should be looking up grades, it shouldn't be parents, it shouldn't be coaches or teachers. The person that should be looking up grades and caring the most about grades is the student. So the student can also use Progress Book in Cuyahoga Falls to monitor their grades. So with their username and login, they can look up their grades. So theoretically, if they look up their grades, they can record them each week. So let's say they're on Progress Book and they have an 89% in ELA. And let's say choir, I've got a 60, forgot to turn in a project. Social studies, I'm at an 80. Science, I start at an 84. In week one in phys ed, I've got a 96. And in math, I'm hovering around an 89. Okay, so each week they'll graph their grades. I should say record their grades. I always tell the students to either use it as a whole number, or Progress Book actually says to the decimal place in the hundredths. So it might be like 89 and 12 hundredths. This might be an 84 and 4 tenths. They can record their decimal as well. The only thing we do not include, we don't include the letter grade. So this is a B plus, but I'm not going to put the letter B next to it. Progress Book will say that. this is going to throw off many of the calculations that Google Sheets will do for us. So we just leave it as the numerical value. And some students, just out of habit, because it's a good habit, they put percent with it. The only problem with percent is now it's viewing these two things differently. Percentage is based out of 100, and it's looking at this as something that is, less than 1, whereas this is something greater than 1. So if they use a percentage, that's fine. They have to use it every single time, every grade, every week. I usually just typically say, you know what, it's easier just to leave the percentage out. Okay, so we've got our week 1 score. They come back week 2 and they check their grades again, and they can graph them again or record them again. Even if they skip weeks, that's fine. The goal here is to have students monitor as much as possible. If they don't get a chance to record in week 2, then maybe they come back in week 3 and they record their grades. Maybe some have gone up a little bit, maybe some have dropped a little bit. I'm just going to put in some arbitrary scores. Okay. So a couple of things that we always talk about, and this is a pretty generic looking sheet so far. One of the things I always say is, let's say we are in week 10, and typically what happens, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. What happens is when we scroll to week 10, we lose the most important part. My subjects are now gone on the left in that first row, I should say first column, column A. And I really want to see that all the time. I want to know, well, what 86, what subject is this? If I'm in week 10 and I'm scrolling over, down here, what subject is this? So something that we can do to freeze those for that first column is I show the students how if you go to view freeze, you can drop down and choose one column. And now, same thing, I've got my subjects here in the column A, and there's a little darker bar there, and that says when I scroll over, I won't lose that subject line, that column A. For this table, it's not as important, but freezing the first row can be really helpful too, especially if you have a data collection with multiple categories down column A. If I were to scroll down, now I won't lose the top line. So we usually do that just to have it. Okay. A few other things. Goal setting is really important to me. As a student athlete, I always had goals set, and my parents would have goals set for me. So we do a goal setting thing here too, and it's called a conditional format. So under format, I'm going to drop down to conditional formatting. And what this is this will actually change the color of a cell if that cell meets a field. For example, right now, it's going to tell me if the cell is not empty to turn it green. The problem is I was clicked on cell K6, so that's the only cell that's being recorded. I definitely want to change that. I want this to include my entire spreadsheet. So I usually use this button right here, because if I click A, it's actually going to select all of column A. Or if I click 2, it's going to select all of row 2. This button up here is special. When you click that button, it selects all of your spreadsheet. So what data? I want everything 1 to 1,000. And notice how all of the things that are not empty right now are turned green. If I wanted it to be the ones that were empty to turn green. What I do is I have my students scroll down to the bottom to find some math words, like greater than and less than. And if they're going to set a goal, I always tell them, think about what you would be disappointed in. And let's make a goal that when your score is less than that, then it'll change colors. So for example, if I get disappointed when my grade hits a 79, then my goal is probably an 80. And what I want this to do is change colors every time my score drops below an 80. In color choices, there's different default formats. For example, green, I usually think good and go and money. So green isn't a good color for that. Maybe a yellow warning color or a red stop color. This will kind of jump off the screen at me and my students, and it'll allow me to make sure I'm able to view my grades when they drop below that score. I'm going to wrap up this first video here and come back with a second video very shortly on some more advanced features. So thank you for watching. I'm going to work on video 2.